Hi, and welcome. Before we get into the story, I want to give you a quick introduction. My name is Lisa Changadvija, and this podcast is where I'll be sharing my novella, Die by 60. Die by 60 explores morality and personal choice through the story of Lily, a weary hospice nurse hardened by years of watching patients suffer at the end, and Arin, a college student from Plaiwan, a small, self-governing country where people choose to die before the age of 60. In Arin's world, people grow up preparing for a peaceful farewell they can control. In Lily's world, death comes late, messy, and often cruel. This story doesn't argue which approach to life and death is better. Instead, it holds them side by side and asks, what if dying with intention could be celebrated rather than feared? Each episode of this podcast will be a chapter of the story. There's a prologue, 21 chapters, and an epilogue. So I'll try to upload a handful of chapters at least once a week. Alright, let's begin with the prologue of Die by 60. Die by 60 by Lisa Changadvija. This book is dedicated to those who will die someday. Prologue, Arin. The Plaiwan air smelled of honeysuckle and sea salt. The ocean breeze was faint and insistent, brushing Arin's silver-streaked hair back from her face, as if to remind her to stay present. Behind her, laughter echoed faintly from the gazebo. Someone was adjusting the chairs again. Glass clinked, silverware shifted, decorations were being tied up. The "Thank you, Arin" banner straightened. Arin learned long ago not to interfere. Celebration days went much smoother when the guest of honor stepped aside and let others do the work. So instead of managing the last-minute chaos, she wandered away from the gazebo and towards the grassy field. She stood barefoot at the edge of a soft green lawn, feeling the earth beneath her feet, grounding her. She eased herself onto the grass and sat cross-legged, ignoring the little voice that reminded her how easily her dress could get stained. At this point, a grass stain wouldn't ruin anything. Not today. In her palm, she turned over a small white pebble that she started carrying with her 30 years ago. Tiny, unassuming, yet somehow precious. It was a reminder of time, of the subtle erosions that shaped life, the quiet power in small, deliberate choices. It was only 2 p.m. Guests wouldn't arrive until 6. Plenty of time. This would be the 33rd celebration Arin had attended, but the first that was hers. Her first as the guest of honor, and her last. She tilted her head back and looked at the oak trees swaying in the distance. The sun filtered through their leaves, making shadow patterns on her knees. There was no fear in her, no hesitation, just the quiet awareness of the weight and beauty of this day. She'd spent decades imagining it. The first celebration she ever attended was her grandmother's. Arin had been just 4 years old. She remembered the homemade chocolate chip cookies her aunt had brought, the gentle rhythm of a poem her grandmother had read out loud, and the way everyone's hands held at the end. Even as a child, she understood something sacred was happening. Since then, Arin had attended many celebrations. Some were loud and crowded, while others were quiet. Her mother's celebration was soft and full of paper lanterns. Dave's celebration, her childhood best friend, was full of live music and funnel cake. One was unexpected, the other was planned. Both occurred way too early for Arin's liking. Each celebration had shaped who she was today, and now it was her turn. At 6 o'clock, the guests would arrive for Arin's celebration. The staff would begin serving champagne. The hired pianist would play softly under the gazebo while friends found their seats and filled their plates. For tonight, Arin selected dishes she loved. Shrimp spring rolls, salmon sashimi, a noodle dish soaked in gravy, and her favorite, cheesecake. She planned to eat very little, but she wanted her guests to experience some of her favorite dishes before she left. At 7, the speeches would begin. She arranged the speaking order carefully. Too many times she witnessed celebrations go off the rails with meandering stories and long-winded tributes. She wanted brevity and intentionality. A few close friends, a couple of mentees, each one had 5 minutes. She even asked her neighbor's daughter to keep time. At 8 o'clock, she would give her final speech. A goodbye she had written and revised dozens of times, a love letter to her life. By 9, the party would wind down. Some guests would linger for hugs, for one last drink, but they all knew to leave before 10. Arin would return to her home, accompanied by her longest living friend, Lily. There, in the quiet of her own bedroom, she would slip into her favorite soft pajamas, press the white pebble in her hand one last time, and fill the air with her favorite songs. It was not death she thought of now, but the completeness of a well-lived life. Chapter 1. Lily. The machine beeped. Every 7 seconds it beeped. To a passerby, they would barely notice the beep. To Lily, every day she works there, the beep gets louder. Of all her other patients, Lily always saved Mr. Wellington for last. Lily stepped into the plain, small, square room. Room 116. Lily adjusted the oxygen tubing behind Mr. Wellington's ear, careful not to stir him. Not for comfort, but for mercy. Mercy for him, mercy for her colleagues, and mercy for her ears. Everyone on staff at Oasis Springs Hospice knew what would happen when he woke up. He screamed. Not once, not briefly, screamed like a man being set on fire over and over every time the pain broke through the meds. That's why they moved him to the back corner of the basement floor. It's quieter here, and also it's harder for visitors to hear. There were no flowers in the room. The tiny hopper windows in this room gave very little sunlight. Flowers wouldn't last long in this room, even if someone did bring them. Mr. Wellington's hands were paper dry, his face wrinkled with age. A framed photo sat near the bed. 3 children in matching football jerseys stood in front of a pretty brunette woman and a much younger Mr. Wellington. Presumably, the woman was his wife, and the children were his own kids, but Lily didn't know for sure. No one had visited Mr. Wellington since the December holidays. It is September now. 9 months of silence. Lily wanted to judge him. Maybe he missed too many birthdays. Maybe he spent all their savings. Maybe he hurt them. Or maybe he did nothing wrong. She didn't know his story. Lily also wanted to judge the wife and kids for abandoning him. She wanted to, but she couldn't. A shameful part of her knew that she was capable of abandoning a family member when they really needed support too. The framed photo would have started to collect dust if Lily hadn't cleaned it occasionally. He wasn't the only patient without a visitor. Birthdays would pass, anniversaries would pass, sometimes even death would pass without a single visitor. In the quietest moments, the hospice felt like a place for the forgotten. New volunteers had begun to arrive, though. Young, curious faces eager to understand what most people try to avoid: death. Lily wasn't sure what to make of the new volunteers yet. She knew that her work of caring for the dying mattered. Helping people pass with dignity was sacred and special. Still, sometimes it felt like her role as a hand-holder, pain manager, and final witness was more valued than the people actually dying. Connie, the colleague who was previously assigned to Mr. Wellington before Lily rotated into the role, would occasionally mention tidbits here and there about Mr. Wellington. It was always when Lily was eating her lunch in the staff break room. Connie had been here when Mr. Wellington was first admitted to the hospice years ago. Connie had met his family. Lily never did. Lily vaguely remembers Connie mentioning that Mr. Wellington used to be a famous footballer. He took his team to the championships and made a ton of money. There was more to the story, but Lily paid little attention to it then because she was just trying to finish her lunch before she had to go back to work. Now, she wishes she had listened to all of Connie's stories. Connie moved away and joined another hospice facility, and with her departure went the last remaining piece of Mr. Wellington's life story. Then came the sound she hated most: a dry, ragged moan. Not loud yet, but in the infancy stage of a scream. His eyelids twitched, his body tensed. "Shh," she whispered. more to herself than to him. But it was too late. His eyes fluttered open, just barely clouded and swimming in pain. "Please," he croaked. "Please, you have to help me." Her throat tightened. It wasn't the first time he asked. But something in his voice today made her stomach turn inside out. She looked at the door. No one was watching, but someone could still overhear. "I can't," she said firmly. "You know I can't." A flicker of unwilling empathy rose. She wanted more time for him, to let him feel more of his story, to stretch what little control he had left. Another groan, louder this time. His hand twitched, trying to reach for her. Lily grabbed the syringe she had ready, uncapped it, and pushed the pain meds into his IV. He exhaled sharply, the medicine already pulling him under in a deep, hopefully painless, sleep. "I'm sorry," she whispered. All she could do was micromanage the pain. "I'm sorry we call this care," she whispered more softly than before. She stood, but didn't move yet. She looked at the photo again, the smiling man in the jersey. She imagined the moments he missed and will miss. The family that hadn't come, the team he'd never see win again, the laughter that would never return. For all the rules, the protocols, the careful management of pain, none of it could give him what he deserved, a chance to fully live these last fragments of his story. "This isn't mercy," she thought to herself. "It's a prison." Lily turned and walked out of the room, down the hallway and around the nurse's station. She walked past a marketing poster curling off the wall. The poster read, "Hospice means dignity." Under the letters was a photo of an elderly woman smiling at a nurse. She smiled a little too widely at the nurse to be believable. Lily walked through the double entrance doors into the sunlight that felt too bright for a day like this. She unlocked her car, an old Toyota she had worked all through high school to afford, and got in the driver's side. She clenched the steering wheel, threw her forehead into the middle of it, and screamed. Just one raw and slightly muffled scream. After 5 minutes of heavy breathing, Lily wiped her eyes, opened the door, and walked back inside. On the way back to the nurse's station, she yanked that marketing poster down and shoved it in the nearby trash can. Chapter 2. Arin. Arin stepped into the hospice lobby just before noon. It didn't smell the way she expected. Not simply clean, but sour and strangely metallic, like disinfectant trying to cover something she couldn't. She tugged her messenger bag higher on her shoulder, the plastic badge on her shirt catching the light. "Volunteer," it read in smudged ink. The receptionist handed her a clipboard with a stack of volunteer forms for herself and one for her best friend Dave, then ushered her towards the waiting area. Arin sat near a stiff plastic chair near the wall, her eyes drifting around the room. Arin started on her stack of paperwork while the other stack waited patiently. Their summer assignment, part of the required course, Gratitude and Systems, Learning from Others, at Plaiwan University, was to write a paper about life and death culture outside of Plaiwan with weekly reflections. The university seemed to think that they would appreciate their own life and culture more if they saw and learned from other cultures firsthand. At the start of the next semester, they were required to present what they learned from their summer course to their entire class. Arin was planning to be a literature teacher after university. Dave was studying to be a software engineer. Arin and Dave had never crossed paths in university courses, but Gratitude and Systems was mandatory for everyone. For the first time since high school, they were back in a class together. Staring at her finished forms, Arin thought back to what led her to the stiff plastic chair she was sitting in now. She and Dave were 10, sunlight filtering through the grimy attic windows as they searched for parts for his latest invention, when they stumbled upon a dusty cookie tin. Back then, Arin loved going over to Dave's house. His kitchen was always loud, full of life, unlike hers. Ever since her mother died, her house felt one placemat too short. Inside the tin were stacks of old, faded family photographs. One showed a thin, elderly woman lying in a hospital bed. She was older than anyone Arin had ever seen in Plaiwan. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, were the words, Aunt Mel's Last Days, Hospice Care, 1992. Neither she nor Dave knew what a hospice was, or who Aunt Mel had been. Dave tried asking his father about it, but his father skillfully avoided the subject. Arin eventually learned the term from school, but that photograph stayed with her. A glimpse of a different ending, outside the careful planning Plaiwan taught. There were plenty of other places she could have gone to research life and death culture, but when she saw the brochure for Oasis Springs Hospice, she jumped at the opportunity. Luckily for her, Dave was willing to join her. Now, Arin sat waiting for Dave to arrive. He was late, which was strange because he loved being punctual. Across from her, a poster hung slightly crooked on the wall. Hospice means dignity, in bold Helvetica letters. A moment later, a woman a little older than Arin, with straight black hair and tan skin, stormed through the same corridor. Her walk was fast and tense and too wild for this place. In the blink of an eye, Arin saw her yank the Hospice Means Dignity poster off the wall. The poster and the poster-stealing woman were gone. Seconds later, a loud clank echoed from a hallway trash bin. No one in the hospice lobby reacted. Arin leaned forward in her chair, unsure whether to follow her, but then someone wearing scrubs appeared in front of her. A nurse, an older blonde woman, a little hunched with a soft look to her, and a clipboard loosely held against her chest, asked, "Arin, right? Sorry to keep you waiting. Have you filled out the forms?" "Yes," said Arin. "But I have a friend joining too. He's late." "That's fine," Nurse Jen said. "I'll show you around so you'll know where to go tomorrow morning when you officially start. You'll both be assigned to companionship and meal services. Non-medical. I hope that's okay." "That's okay," Arin said, tilting her head. "I'm not studying medicine." Jen handed Arin a volunteer badge to clip onto her shirt. "Are you studying health policy?" the woman asked, glancing at the badge. "Policy students always have the best questions." Shrinking a little, Arin replied, "No, I'm studying literature." "Ah," Jen's smile dimmed, just slightly. They moved down the hallway together. Nurse Jen was chatting in a stream of practice warmth. She must have had the same conversation with hundreds of volunteers. It felt genuine to Arin, but also a little scripted. Arin only half listened. There was a soft hum of machines all around her. Her eyes traced the sterile tiles and surveyed the crisp white lights. Paintings of various landscapes decorated the halls. Thin metal railings ran along the middle of all the walls, presumably for delicate hands to hold. A few rooms down, she slowed. One door was closed, and something about it stilled her. The plate beside it read, Wellington. She didn't know the name. She didn't know any names. But the energy was different. The hallway felt quieter here, like the air leaned inwards. Midway through the tour, a sudden presence appeared in the far end of the corridor. Dave was striding towards them with confident, long-legged steps that made Arin's own pace feel sluggish. His messy brown hair caught the light, and his hazel eyes gleamed with easy charm and curiosity. When he pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, a crooked grin spread across his face, the kind that made it obvious he knew he looked good and wasn't even trying to hide it. "The receptionist told me where to find you," he said, flashing a volunteer badge pinned slightly crooked on his shirt. "Sorry I'm late." Nurse Jen gave him a stern look. Even handsome volunteers have to learn. Showing up on time is part of the job. Dave raised his hand in mock surrender. "Point taken, but clearly being fashionably late adds to my charm." Arin couldn't help but smile, and Nurse Jen rolled her eyes with a smirk. Later, as the tour wrapped, Nurse Jen excused herself to check on some paperwork, leaving Arin and Dave standing by the reception desk. "So," Dave began, leaning casually against the counter, "how bad did I mess up? Am I on thin ice already?" Arin gave him a mock serious look. "Let's just say the ice is cracking, but there's still time to skate your way back." He laughed, eyes twinkling. Good, because I have a feeling this place is going to be interesting. Chapter 3. Arin. Welcome to your first official day. Nurse Jen greeted with a grin and a voice far too loud for 7 in the morning, her energy vibrating through the polished linoleum floor. The early sunlight hadn't yet reached the lobby, but her enthusiasm filled the space all the same. It should be a calm day for the two of you. Just be present with the patients and give them their meals at 8 and noon. Arin and Dave both smiled at her nervously. Each of them received a clipboard with a handwritten list of rooms and patients, the papers rustling as Nurse Jen passed them over, marking the first tangible step in their new role. Introduce yourself to the patients. Name, pronouns, where you're from, a little bit about yourself, and let them know that you'll be stopping by every so often and that you'll also bring them their breakfast and lunch today. Remember, Nurse Jen added, leaning slightly closer, your job isn't just to deliver meals. The goal is to provide company and comfort. Sometimes just your presence, a chat, or a smile is what matters most. That's the heart of this role. Arin wrote every instruction Nurse Jen gave in a purple notebook. Dave just smiled and nodded agreeingly. In all the years that Arin had known him, he usually took notes as diligently as she did. He didn't today. He has been rather nonchalant in general about his studies lately. Arin wrote a note in the margins to remind herself to ask him about it. Arin looked down at her paper list. Room 103, James White. Arin found the room quickly and knocked on the wooden archway. The air smelled of polished wood, leather, and the faint tang of old paper. A bearded man in a faded plaid shirt came into view. His hair was flecked with gray and deep lines carved in the corner of his eyes and mouth. He shifted slowly, each movement deliberate, the leather of the chair creaking softly under him as he lowered the newspaper. His hands, knobby and molted with age, gripped the paper with practiced ease. On a side table, a small stack of well-worn travel books leaned against a framed photograph of a bustling foreign street. A globe with faded countries resting on the corner of a shelf, and a brass compass caught the morning light. His brow furrowed slightly, clearly annoyed by the interruption. Hi, Mr. White? After her first introduction, Arin felt like she was already failing for the day. She tried to make conversation, but he did not want to engage with her and just glared at her when she fumbled her introduction lines. After she concluded, he promptly went back to his newspaper. Arin thought to herself, clearly he would prefer to spend his time reading about the latest political scandal than talk to a young university student who doesn't know what she's doing. Arin left Mr. White and continued searching for other people on her list, trying her best to read the script but also appear genuine. A seemingly impossible task. Next to each name on her list, she made 3 boxes. The first box was for introductions, the second box was for breakfast, and the third box was for lunch. She had checked all the introduction boxes on her list except for one room. Room 112, Emily O'Connor. Arin glanced at her watch and realized she was taking too much time doing introductions. She needed to introduce herself to Miss O'Connor before breakfast rounds began. Finding the room quickly, she knocked on the doorway. A thin woman in her 70s with silver-streaked hair and wrinkles around her eyes was sitting at a table with a scattered puzzle in front of her. The edges of the puzzle formed a grassy meadow, but the insides were still a mess. Arin glanced at the cover of the 1,000-piece puzzle box. It was going to be a picture of a pristine brown horse in a grassy field. Hopefully. Arin introduced herself for the last time today. The woman glanced up with hopeful eyes that longed for deeper connection, but Arin didn't know what to say or do, so instead, she kept muddling through her introduction script. Miss O'Connor did not react to anything Arin said. After what felt like 10 minutes of awkward silence, a small photo frame resting on the bedside table caught Arin's eye. It was a photo of a golden retriever, happily posing in a sitting position. Miss O'Connor noticed Arin looking at the picture and smiled wistfully. "That's Bella," she said confidently. "My precious girl. She passed away, I guess, 22 years ago? I still talk to her picture every day, though. Tears swelled up in Mrs. O'Connor's eyes as memories came flooding back. Bella was my shadow. Everywhere I went, she followed. We used to take long walks in the park every morning, rain or shine. She loved chasing squirrels, even though she never caught one. Miss O'Connor chuckled, but her smile faltered. She was always there for me, especially when I needed it. She paused for a long inhale before continuing. And then, one afternoon, she ran into the street chasing a ball. A car came out of nowhere, and I wasn't paying attention. It happened so fast. Her voice cracked. It was my fault. I should have been watching her. I wasn't there for her. The woman's hands trembled slightly. Sometimes, I wonder if she's looking down at me from heaven, hating me for letting her die that way. Arin didn't know what to say. She just listened. But she felt the room grow heavier. Here was a woman who was facing her own final days, but 22 years after her dog died, she's still bound by guilt and grief. Death is waiting at her door, and yet the grief over her dog is what consumes her thoughts. Arin, just before she spoke, glanced, detecting someone watching her from across the archway. It was the woman who tore down the poster yesterday. Arin pretended she didn't see her, but if she was being honest with herself, the staring unsettled her a little. Arin walked closer to the door to close it, but then Dave appeared in the archway, blocking the view of the staring woman. Gesturing with his hands for her to join him, Arin quickly said, "Miss O'Connor, I'll be right back with your breakfast," and stepped into the hallway, the door clicking shut behind her. Dave had a goofy smile on. He seemed at ease, as if this odd space already felt sensible. It always amazed her how Dave could walk into any room and fit, not by trying to belong, but by making belonging look effortless. Arin found herself watching him with a mix of admiration and envy. But then she caught it, a slight tremor in his fingers as he tucked his hands into his pockets. "This place feels a little odd. Chaotic, compared to our lectures, huh?" he said, chuckling. She nodded, then agreed. "Miss O'Connor is still grieving for her dog, but it's been 22 years. "That's a long time," Dave said. "It made me wonder," Arin trailed off. "About what?" "About grief. About what it means to carry something that long." Dave tilted his head. "We don't really do that in Plaiwan. Not like they do here. You know that." "I know what they teach us," Arin said. "That grief is for what's left undone." "Right. But my mother died when I was 7. She didn't get to choose. There's a lot she left undone. And I used to cry every night for years." Dave's expression softened. "I don't cry anymore," Arin went on. "I thought that meant I healed. Sitting with that woman just now, I felt something come back, like maybe I've just learned how to push down the grief. What if I'm still weighed by grief decades from now?" Dave offered a faint smile, but didn't quite meet her eyes. "Grief is messy, but you won't be weighed down by it. I know you'll learn to grieve with intention. You're not going to let grief dictate your experiences and emotions decades from now." His voice wavered slightly, like something in the sentence was heavier than he meant it to be. Arin opened her mouth to ask how he could be so sure, but Dave stepped back and ran a hand through his hair. She noticed how deliberately he moved back, as if steadying himself. "Anyway," he said, lighter again, "you're doing great in there." He ended the conversation with a grin, but the decision left a hollow space in Arin's chest. That night, Arin tossed and turned, her thoughts looping in fragments. The sterile halls, the woman who was still mourning her dog, the heavy silence behind every polite smile, and Dave. So steady, so certain, too certain. There had been something in his voice, and something about the way he had tucked his hand into his pockets too quickly. Maybe it was nothing, but it unsettled her, the way instinct sometimes did. Chapter 4. Lily. Lily pretended to be busy. She sorted meds into plastic trays, checked names off of a clipboard, relabeled files, but her eyes kept flickering towards the young, wavy-haired volunteer standing in Miss O'Connor's room. Miss O'Connor had told the same story 100 times, about her old dog, Bella. Sometimes Lily wondered if it was the disease making Miss O'Connor repeat herself, or if she just liked hearing her own voice. Like it somehow kept her tethered to the world. Maybe she was secretly a masochist because she knew there was no choice for staff but to endure the slow torture of her storytelling every time. Lily had seen how new staff and volunteers reacted when they heard the story for the first time. There were two kinds of people. The one who got all teary and said how sorry they were, reassuring Miss O'Connor that it wasn't her fault, even though it had been 22 years. Or the ones who mentioned how cute her dog was, and then awkwardly changed the subject. But this volunteer, she just stood there, quiet with an almost confused look on her face. No tears, no pity, no awkward deflection, nothing. Lily frowned. Did she not understand the story? Maybe she hates dogs or something. Lily watched eagerly, hoping the volunteer, or Miss O'Connor, would speak. Before Lily could see either reaction, another volunteer came between them in the doorway, blocking Lily's view. Disappointed in the missed opportunity, Lily returned to her files. Miss O'Connor sometimes reminded her of her own mother, especially the way she repeated the same stories over and over, like a worn-out record. Even though her mother was only 67, Lily already knew she'd be the one to take care of her someday. Her mother's undiagnosed bipolar disorder made the relationship difficult, and Lily kept her at arm's length. Her mother's short temper and bad financial habits made visits tense, and Lily was grateful she lived at least 30 minutes away. As the oldest child, she felt obligated to check in, but that didn't mean she liked visiting her mother. They had nothing in common. She could only handle hearing the same stories when she was getting paid for it. There was something quietly heartbreaking about the endless repetition of storytelling, like a slow unraveling. How long before Lily was telling the same stories on repeat, too? Lily wondered. A beeping machine pulled her back to the present. Jen passed with a clipboard, whispering with excitement, I just found out some of these volunteers are from Plaiwan. Lily raised her brows. Yeah? I don't think I've ever met anyone from that country before. Me neither, Jen said, forgetting to whisper. She filed it away, Plaiwan. She knew the headlines, but not the details. The rest of the shift passed with little incident. Lily finished her charts, restocked supplies in the med room, and helped transfer a new patient into the new room. No one coded, no one cried, no one died. By the time she left the building, the sky was already turning violet with the early edge of sunset. She sat in her car for a long minute before starting it, watching the light shift on the windshield, trying not to think about Miss O'Connor or her mother or the time-bound parallels between them. Tomorrow, she promised herself, no spiraling, no overthinking, just stay afloat. But of course, tomorrow had other plans. After another relatively quiet shift, Lily had just clocked out and reached for her messenger bag when she heard it again. The familiar scream. Mr. Wellington. Oh, fun, she muttered, glancing at the clock. Jen was still on shift. Let her deal with him. Another scream ripped down the hallway, raw and desperate. Why wasn't Jen in his room already? Lily asked herself. Then another scream to echo through the hallway. And another. For fuck's sake, Lily hissed under her breath, her annoyance sharpening into anger. She begrudgingly started down the hall. By the time she reached the door to room 116, the screaming had stopped. Jen must have finally given him his meds. Lily was about to turn around, but decided to linger outside the door to throw a snarky comment at Jen about being slow when she heard it. They can't give you what you want, but maybe you can take it. Lily froze. The words were quiet, muffled through the door, but unmistakable. What the hell? She thought. Lily pushed open the door. The same young volunteer from Miss O'Connor's room stood by Mr. Wellington's bed. Lily's voice came out loud and livid. What are you doing here?